were sharing, in a sense, your own strategies and your own approaches to some of these sort of problems. And I wonder sometimes, even as we consume this external information, and I know it's great because sometimes you do generate new knowledge by looking at the existing knowledge. As you say, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. If somebody has already cracked the code to something, why not utilize that? But then you also realize there are many ways to skin a cat. You also realize that some of these ideas that are being propagated in these books are based off certain context that probably are not applicable to you based on where you live and the circumstances that you're in. So how does one begin to, rely on themselves to generate new knowledge and not begin, or rather not get stuck? Because to some degree, I think it can also become almost like a crutch, that you're presented with an issue and the first thing you want to do is see what's out there, instead of probably trying to reflect on your own lived experience, learn from your own sort of set of problems and mistakes and failures that you've had. How does one begin to, have a confidence in themselves and also realize that they can also come up with solutions and ideas and strategies to achieve? Like you, it seems like you're based on some of the issues you've encountered in terms of how do you look at consistency? Because I think that's one of the problems that we suffer a lot with personal development. As you say, somebody reads this book, begins applying some of those ideas, and then they expect to see sort of the outcomes and the outputs maybe in a month's time, and it doesn't. You'd rather look at it maybe long term, and there's that idea that we tend to overestimate what we can do in 10 years and underestimate something. I think
we overestimate what we can do in 1 month and underestimate what we can do in 10 years.
In 10 years, yes. Because when you look at it from that point of view, then you realize, oh, wow, despite all these problems that have been, there was actually progress that was happening, and I've been making some steady. So what would you say around that?
So the question is how, I'm not sure I got the question. You have said so many things and I'm a little bit lost.
So let's see if I can summarize it. How does one begin to rely on themselves and not use external sources as a crutch?
Yeah, that's a very good question. There is a story. I think it's more of an anecdote that I heard, and it's something like this. Like they spoke of these gods of creation. Like there were 3 of them, and that when they created man, they knew that man could be. So it's an anecdote. So we are not taking it literally. It's a story to learn from. They knew that man could be like them. They built this creature with the ability and to some degree, the ability and capacity to become more of a god. They could be able to be as wise, to be as strong, to be as powerful. And the secret to this particular ability that they had seen that man would have eventually, they were contemplating, where do we keep it? Because we don't want it to be easily available to all of them. At least let it be that those who are seeking, those who are searching, those who are trying to find can get to this particular place to be comparable, to be somehow more like us. And so one of the gods said, okay, if we are going to keep it somewhere so that they would at least have to search to find it, then maybe we put it under the depths of the ocean. And one of the gods said, under the depths of the ocean, that it would not be easy for all of them to be able to find it at least. So let everybody have the equal opportunity to at least a shot at finding it. So one said, maybe we keep it on mountaintops around the world in all the different places so that those who are in search, those who are in a quest, can one day reach it. And as they are debating and contemplating, and then they said of one of the gods who was like the wisest, and that she suggested that the place where we can keep it in such a way that they might not even ever look for it is to put it inside of them. If you keep it out there, they are going to be outward seeking and outward looking. Somehow it's going to become relatively easy to find it and become public knowledge. But that if you put it inside each and every one of them, it means that it would be each and everyone's personal journey to find what it is that is of vital importance to make them become who they were really created to be in full. And so the decision was made. We would put that wonderful, most powerful gift that all of them have access to, not under the oceans, not on the mountaintops, not somewhere in the heavens, but inside everyone.
Man,
so
that's
I
powerful.
guess
That's very powerful.
So if we look at that story, I believe the moral, the lesson in the story is quite evident. And it's simple because what is the quest of self-development? What really are you trying to develop? You're not trying to develop the person whose book you are reading. You're not trying to develop anyone else. You are trying to develop you. And we are all in this journey, by the name itself, trying to develop ourselves. And where is the biggest wisdom, the most powerful truth that will help you become yourself fully? Within. It's inside. It's not out there, it is within. Do you need tools that are not in your current possession right now that you could get from other people? Yes. But once you get those tools, where are you supposed to apply them? To turn inward. I like the way, I believe it's this man called, this Sadhguru man. I like the way he phrased it in his book, where he said, the way out is in. The way out of this chaos that we are in, the way out of this, being less than ourselves, the way out of these traps in which we are finding ourselves today is to turn inwards. And for me, I believe that was one of the gifts that COVID gave me, the opportunity to turn inwards. The period of the world, the only time in history where we were literally cut off from everyone else, and you had all the time in the world to be with you, just with you, with yourself. And within that period, I believe that it was the fact that I was exploring, I was trying to find answers about who the hell is Kizito Nyoitsimbi. I was trying to understand, what do I actually really want, as opposed to, let's say, just accumulating things. What am I really trying to get out of this life? And the silence of that period, the isolation and the being cut off from everyone else was just the best thing available. Because when the music stops, what do you do? You have to make your own music. You have to listen to your own heartbeat somehow. You would have to turn inwards, in a sense. And it's not that necessarily you would do it, but it's the opportunity that gives you, that particular opportunity to be that actually nobody can come see me. There is nothing to do. People are all caught up in their different parts of, in fact, people are feeling depressed. And when people are feeling depressed, they are not talking very much. So it's quiet everywhere. That's a powerful opportunity. And I wish, let me say, I wish we had all tried to use it in that way, to turn inwards, as an opportunity to turn inwards, as opposed to lamenting how horrible the lockdowns were. And I did lament, but I lamented more or less in chorus with other people. Because as a person, I was having kind of a realization. I was happy with the things that I was finding about myself. And if I can just give maybe one tip that I believe works a lot more than anything else when you're trying to discover those secrets that are within you, as opposed to, accumulating knowledge from outside, is that you need to write. This cannot be emphasized enough. There is one way I know for sure works to think. And to think properly, I know that you must write. That is, at least for me, I tell myself, I write to think. Kizito, you write to think. That's the purpose of writing. You're not writing to particularly say anything. You are writing so that you can process your thought. And it's interesting. I found out, like, it's interesting how you think you are thinking properly until you begin to write what you are actually thinking. And then you realize that your thoughts are not coherent with each other. They are not consistent. They are not even sensible. And you have to contend with that and make them coherent and make them consistent and make them make sense to yourself. So when you write, it's an act of self-exploration. It's an act of self-discovery, and it's an act of explaining yourself to yourself. Yeah, something like that. I think that's the most powerful tool I can share with anybody who is trying to, disconnect from the trap of only bringing in knowledge and start the journey of producing, also evolving from the wellspring of wisdom that is within you, because there is one. We have to believe this to start the journey, at least. You are not an empty vessel to be filled. You are a treasure to be dispensed. And if you can just believe that, then you can start digging for that gemstone that is right inside of you.
So yeah, I like that, and I like the way you have said it. Writing to explain yourself to yourself.
Exactly.
And I think
it's ridiculous sounding somehow, but it's very true.
It's
Until
very
you
true.
write to explain yourself to yourself, that's when you realize that your thinking is messed up. Your thinking is actually messed up. And when you try to do that, now you start correcting your thinking. Now you start rectifying the way your thought processes go. And when you listen to now these people, because you have been trying to explain certain things to yourself, the clarity that you can gain is much more. And let me just drop this before I stop, that one part of exploring and reading from all of these people that I found works for me is that I don't read just for knowledge. I also read just to reprogram my mind, because I realized the mind is running a program 24/7 all the times. And it can be running an old program, or it can be running a new script. For it to run a new script, you have to be giving the new script, and almost on a daily basis. It's like your stomach is always digesting and absorbing stuff. You eat every day, it's digesting and absorbing stuff. If you are not giving something to digest, it's struggling to digest whatever is there. But for the mind, thoughts don't get digested and get pushed out. They are always recycled. So there's always something to be working on and processing and repeating. So there's a period that I was reading, and I knew that I'm reading stuff, and I know that this is not new knowledge. This is something that I know very well. So why am I reading it? I had to explain that to myself. Like I said, explaining myself to myself. I had to explain why I'm reading what I already know to myself. And the explanation I came up with was, I am reading not to gain new knowledge, but to consistently reprogram my mind with proper paradigms, with correct principles, with things that are universally true, and then see how I can continuously contextualize them to my life. Because these are the lives of different people. How do they apply in my case?
Brilliant. Well explained. I really like the way you've broken it down. And it is true. And probably people can even think of writing, or as other people refer, journaling, as even some form of output.
Absolutely.
When you're, consuming that knowledge now, to begin to piece it together for it to make sense to you is by way of writing. There is even terms like brain dumps. Go ahead.
That's very true, Andrew. Thank you for saying that, because what you've just said, it's directly, you are saying it's making sense to you. Guess who it's also making sense to if you put it out there? To other people. If you have made it make sense to you, and you can put it down in writing and put it out there, then it can make sense to another person. And they can now read and be like, wow, I've never thought of it this way. It's not that I've never thought about it. It's just that I've never thought about it this way. I have read Steve Covey, for instance. I would go and read, who can I quote? Let's say I read
Anthony Robbins.
Anthony Robbins, for instance, or I go and read Eckhart Tolle, and they express kind of the same ideas in some circumstances, but through the lens of their life and their experience. And what do I say to myself? Not that I've never thought about this, but I've never thought about this way. And that is the power of you writing what you understand, processing it to make sense to yourself through your own circumstances, through your own life experiences. When you write it out there, guess what? There are people who your experiences are closer to than the experiences of Anthony Robbins, than the experiences of Stephen Covey. And when they will read you write, they would say, oh, it makes sense. And I've never thought about it this way, or never heard someone put it in this way. Because you are understanding universal knowledge, but contextualizing it to yourself and maybe to your particular life story and life situation. And that is what makes it powerful, because we don't read knowledge. We are more tuned as human beings to connect with stories and experiences and shared struggles and shared difficulties. These are the things that most bring us together. So I believe what you just pointed out about the fact that when you explain it to yourself, it's a way of producing knowledge. Absolutely. It's a way of evolving knowledge that has been there through another lens. Yeah.
And I know we actually even spoke about this, saying, you can have several teachers teaching the same thing, but you tend to gravitate to one over another.
Yeah,
and
I
it's
remember
all
we
around,
talked about that.
and it's all around how maybe somebody brings out the information. You tend to feel that one puts it in a way that you're able to understand. And I do have my own personal experience, as I shared. I think when I was in high school, I had trouble in mathematics, and my parents put me on, for some extra tutorial, what we call tuition. And this one teacher really broke it down in a way that I was like, wow, I didn't see. I saw mathematics in a whole brand new way, and I got to love it. You know, he also broke down, you know, concepts in chemistry. You know, all these things, you know, now began to make sense. It was the same principles that were being taught in my class, but it's just that this guy brought it out in a new way that I found it easier to understand and even appreciate. So yes, so those are some of the things that are.
Let me make a guess.
Yeah.
I want to guess that this teacher that helped you to understand mathematics much better was probably younger than your previous teacher.
Not necessarily. I think they were actually
not necessarily.
They were more or less the same age.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, the reason why I was maybe thinking of that is also because of my personal experience in a kind of similar situation. For the longest time since I started my secondary school education, I wasn't understanding mathematics. And until they brought this guy who had just gotten his A levels to start teaching us. And then the way he explained everything, I was like, wow, it just started making sense. This is me trying to lead to the point that one of the reasons why we may also feel a little bit put off from trying to put things out there is the fact that we are not experienced. You are not Tony Robbins, and you know that, right? You are not Steve Covey. You don't have the years and the experience that he accumulated. You don't have anything that they have. You are a nobody fundamentally. So who are you to think that someone would care about your point of view? That's a worthy question to ask. If you are going to write anything, at least you have to contend. I mean, you can't write anything and put it out there without contending with that fact. As someone who tries to put stuff out there, I know that for a fact. But just like what you have explained, and maybe what I've explained is like, if you think about the fact that when you are in school, your teacher with his years of experience sometimes would explain concepts to you and you wouldn't get it. And then a fellow classmate who knows nothing about those concepts prior would explain it to you from how they have understood it, and then you would get it. Why does that happen very often? In fact, more often than not. Because your classmate has your perspective in mind when they are trying to explain it to you. Your teacher no longer does. He has forgotten how it feels to be in that age. He has forgotten how it feels to struggle with those particular problems. His mind has gone to a different level of abstraction, and he solves problem at a different level. But somebody who is with you at that particular stage, if they get it the way they put it back to you, is always better. So maybe you wouldn't write for the world's population, but maybe you can write for the next person beside you. You can write for someone at your age level, at your current level in the professional hierarchy. You can write for people who struggled, who are going to face the same struggles you went through when you finally understood that step. So that's something to keep in mind, and know that, okay, the fact that I don't know so much and I need to absorb so much from the world doesn't mean there are no people out there who don't understand what I now understand and can now help them. Something to always keep in mind.
No, I think you bring up a new point, and I mean, there's that aspect of sort of peer-to-peer learning, and then we see it in various contexts. I mean, if you look at even the Toastmaster program, of which we all follow, it's really based on that principle, and I do agree that helps. Maybe even now that I think about it, it could be the way, you know, because I was doing these classes, these two extra tuition classes, I was doing them after school hours. It was some of them were during, you know, holiday period, or after class hours, and you know, we would literally sit side by side with a teacher, and the concept will be now broken down in a way. So maybe the idea of, you know, having somebody standing up in front of you and taking you we all have our own speed in terms of how we consume information. So it could be maybe some of those elements in terms of what made it work for me.